welcome everybody to another episode of Writers to Writers podcast. I'm Suzanne Lieurance, and my co-host here is
Yeah, I'm Simon Rose.
okay. Now, today we're going to be talking about outlining your novel because last week we talked about how to quickly get your first draft. And so we're kind of backing up a little bit and seeing how to do the outline. Because I don't know about you, Simon, but I've always found if I do an outline first, then that first draft comes a little bit quicker. So before you decide, okay, I don't want to listen to this podcast or watch this podcast because I'm not going to outline, I want you to realize we're not talking about your standard outline like you did in high school and, it's just kind of boring. We're going to talk about how to outline where you do it in such a way that it makes your story better. It doesn't make you locked into anything or feel like you're creating this mechanical story. And it doesn't have to be detailed, doesn't have to be a 100-page document or something. It's more like a roadmap. It simply helps you avoid getting lost halfway through your novel. So what do you think
Well,
about
this is it. Yeah, I mean, with my first one, I just thought I think we may have mentioned last time or in the time before that, but I know with my first one, I just thought I just had to let the muse take me and write a wonderful book, and so I didn't have an outline particularly for the first one, and I enjoyed writing it and everything, but I didn't have I did have an outline for the second one.
okay.
And it wasn't that strict, and I found it helped me. It certainly, and I did an outline ever since for the books, and they varied in their complexity and everything. I mean, most unfinished, what we would refer to as unfinished novels, they don't fail because the writer couldn't write. They
Mhm.
fail because the writer eventually they just don't know what happens next.
Right, right. Yeah, that's why I call it a roadmap. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know how to get there? You know? So, anyway, all right. Well, we're going to give you 5 tips today. So, let's start with the first tip. And you can jot these down as you're listening if you want to, but we'll have maybe a handout to go with it. I'll see if I can create that later. Okay, first tip is stop thinking of an outline as a prison, something that just locks you into every scene before you ever stop writing, because that's not what we're suggesting. Your outline is simply your best guess today about how the story unfolds. So you're allowed to change it, as you go, but just think of it as here's where I'm thinking I want to go.
Exactly. It's like planning a road trip. You know where you're headed, and the major stops along the way. And if you discover something interesting on the journey, you can always take a detour. I mean, I know with the ones that I put out last year, my alternate history World War II ones. I think at various points through the writing process, they were going to be it was going to be a trilogy, and I thought, oh yes, this is definitely going to be 3 books, like I've done that before and everything. And I had an excellent cliffhanger ending for the end of the first book, and the beginning of the third book. I had a wonderful beginning and everything. But as I was putting, I don't, I think I'd written about a third of the middle section, but I felt it was just filler. The characters were going around from one mythological site to another in England, to places like Stonehenge type places, or castle ruins and things like this, to get yet another clue that the reader could lock into and everything. But even to me, it felt like filler. And the book that I've got coming out very soon. In that one, I think it was the entire central section that came later on, and everything, and that just wasn't there before. And then there was one that came out in 2014. Now it is a long time ago, called The Sphere of Septimus, a fantasy tale with monsters and things like that, and there's a quest and things. But in that one of the things I had in my head for many years was a map of a fantasy land. I never knew where I was going to put it. I was sure it would fit in a novel at some point. And then towards the end, when the book had all been edited and things, I thought, well, this is going to help the reader follow what's going on in this story a bit more, and it would fit into the story. So definitely, I think it improved it in the end in all those cases.
Yeah, you kind of knew where you were going, even though you didn't
Yes,
know
exactly. Yeah,
exactly where it
yeah.
was going to fit in. Okay, good point. All right, let's go to tip two. This is just know your major plot points before you write. Okay, so even if you don't know every chapter, you should know the major turning points. For example, know the opening hook. What are you
Hmm.
going to open with? What's going to be your inciting incidents that starts the story off, gets things moving? Then what's going to be that first major turning point? Then the midpoint, and the midpoint comes mid through, but you'll learn more about what a midpoint is supposed to do. It's not just midway through the story, it does something, it has a purpose. Then the all is lost moment, if you're looking at outlining your story through the hero's journey like that, you'll understand what the all of the lost moment is. Then the climax, where everything kind of, comes to a head and you have to solve things, and then the ending. So if you know these, you're rarely going to be staring at a blank page wondering what happens next because you know that's where you're trying to go. Okay? So do you do outline this way, Simon?
Well, yes, this is the thing with these points that you just mentioned here, knowing these major plot points. Now we may talk about some of this later on in this podcast, but what this helps you do, it helps you in that you don't have to write in order. I think we probably again we
Oh, we
may have
talked about
mentioned
that
it
last
in
week.
this in another podcast as well. I
Mhm.
mean, if you have some idea, for example, out of this list you just mentioned, if we have some idea that there's a midpoint in the story and you know what goes in the midpoint, you can get away from your computer screen and go to your local coffee shop or somewhere away from your home office and write the midpoint or make some notes on the midpoint. You don't have to write it in order. If you've got this, but I mean, you can't really do that unless you've got this roadmap. And you could even write the ending. I mean, some people probably think, well, I can't write the ending until I've written everything else. Well, no, I've written the ending sometimes,
Yeah, I
before
think some
everything.
people like to write the ending because then they really are clear about where they're trying to get their characters to go, you know?
Yeah, and I think that was it with this one that's coming out this month. I think with that I had for quite a while. I thought it was done. I think back earlier in the year, in February or March, I thought it was all done and everything. But there was just something about the ending was nice. I'd wrapped things up nicely, but it was very quick. It was like it was originally it was written as an epilogue at the end. It was
Uh,
only two paragraphs or something
so it felt
and
too
I
rushed.
again I kept thinking, well, I'll expand this into a chapter. But it just didn't. I just didn't like it. It was just again felt like filler to me. But then one day the inspiration came to me, and I was able to come up with a proper ending to the story. Uh,
Good.
but um, but
Yeah,
if you've got that thing with the plot points, you can take it away somewhere else, away from your home computer, and not write it in order if you want to. It works very nicely.
good. Okay. All right, so go ahead and give us tip three.
Well, in that one, I suppose people do think about getting tied down with the outline. That's one of the things you'd mentioned at the beginning. And I think people think, well, if I've got an outline, I have to start with chapter one, chapter
Mhm.
two, chapter three, and this sort of stuff. Um, but you don't have to do it that way, particularly. Again, it's similar to what you just mentioned about the major points. I mean, in the story you might have important things like the hero discovers a secret, the villain attacks, the allies meet, the relationship grows. There's a major betrayal. Um, once you know this the sequence of this and how it all works, you can write this stuff, and you can decide on chapters later. I mean, sometimes I've written things down and it's turned into two chapters or three
Mhm.
something, and sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes it's the other way. Something you've written gets shrunk down and ends up being less. So
Yes,
yeah,
you can see
uh,
your outline is flexible then, it's just you've got it down, you kind of know what's going to happen, but like you said, sometimes a chapter or a scene will turn into a chapter or more than one chapter. So that's good. Okay. All right, let's go on to tip 4. And that is put the big moments in the right place. Okay. And that's one thing I think people don't understand sometimes in a novel, particularly genre fiction, everything needs to be in certain places within the manuscript, not just anywhere you think it goes. And you learn more about that as you learn more about the genre that you are writing. So, one mistake many beginning writers make is putting everything that's important, they either put it too early or they wait too long. And readers subconsciously expect stories to unfold with a certain rhythm. Now, a good way to get to know these rhythms is look for these things in your favorite books in the genre you like to read. Okay, so here's a simple guideline. Look something like this. In the first few pages of your manuscript or your outline, you want your opening hook. Okay, and you can learn more about writing good hooks. That's a whole topic on itself. Then your inciting incident, what gets the story actually going, usually something changes or whatever, that should come around 10% in, about 10% in of your manuscript. Now, you're not going to know all that percentage points exactly when you're writing your first draft, but you can kind of go back then and see, did I put the inciting incident too early? Did I put it too late? Wherever. But when you've got your outline at the first, then you're going to be more likely to put things in the appropriate space. Your first plot point needs to come about 25% in. So, if I've got my inciting incident here around 10%, I've got a little bit more, 15 more percent to write before I come to that first plot point. Then the midpoint, and a midpoint in a novel is usually where everything changes. Maybe the character thought something was happening, they were going after something, then they suddenly get new information, and uh-oh, that's not going to work, and they have to kind of switch gears. That's usually around 50 to 60% of the novel, so plan for that in your outline. Then the dark moment where everything is lost, that's around 75% of the novel, because now we've still got room for them to correct things, because your climax comes around 90 to 95%, and then your ending, after that. So plan for those things: opening hook, inciting incident, first plot point, midpoint, dark moment of all is lost, and the climax. And these aren't rigid rules, they're just guidelines. Okay. What do you have to say about percentages, Simon?
well, I mean, the readers they're not usually aware of these, consciously aware anyway
Right.
of these things that you just mentioned there, but they definitely notice if a story feels too rushed
Mhm.
or too slow. I mean, pacing is important. I mean, especially for what I'm doing, I'm writing stuff for middle grade readers or young adults and things, and you don't have that much time to grab their attention at the beginning. You've got to get their attention within the first few pages, something quite dramatic to get their attention, and then they're going to think, "What? Wait a minute! I need to read the." I need to turn the page and get and see what's going to happen next. Yes, certainly. Maybe I've got the evil villain explaining their scheme to take over the world or something like that. But and I can certainly include that early on in the book. But I don't want to slow the pace down too much with something like that. Um, although, as we were saying earlier about sometimes getting things down and writing things out of order and things. if it is the evil villain's scheme to take over the world, I might write that all at once. Again, away from the home office, so I can focus. And then I've written it down, and it's a lot of text that I've written, but I know I'm going to be able to split that up into different chapters and it'll help with the pacing as I'm going along. And that may also, as we've been saying, is that way may also mean not sticking to the outline and the outline changing during the writing process.
Yeah. And I think, we keep saying you can change the outline. So people think, well, then why do I need to do an outline? But you really do need to sort of know where you're going so that when you do deviate from the outline, you're doing it purposefully fully and it's all making sense. Okay. All right, let's go on to the final tip for today, which is to understand the tropes readers expect. And I know what some people are thinking. What is a trope? Isn't that just a writing cliche? But a trope means understanding why readers pick up your book in your genre because they expect certain things. Mystery writers expect, there to be some kind of crime and it to be solved by the end of the book. Fantasy writers expect to go into some world that's not, like we live in. Romance readers expect there to be sort of a happy ever after or happy for now ending where the couple gets together. Thriller readers have their own expectations, historical readers, so you've got to kind of know those tropes. And if your book ignores everything readers love about that genre, they're going to be disappointed and they're not going to want to read your next book.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the thing is, in certain tropes and genres, similar things, I suppose. Um, but yes, if somebody's picking up a romance novel or a fantasy novel and things, and it doesn't have things in it that they're expecting, they're not only going to feel disappointed, they're going to feel a bit cheated, perhaps,
Yeah,
that they've been encouraged. Oh, look at this! This is a book in my favorite genre. Then they start reading it, and they might be even a third. If you're lucky, they might have got a third of the way in, and given you the benefit of the doubt, thinking, well, okay, well, it's still not quite what I expected, but I'm going to keep reading. But the chances are they might decide within, 2 or 3 chapters that no, this is not for me, and I'm going to put it down and never get any further with it, really. So your job is to fulfill these promises
mhm.
in your own original way. It doesn't mean that all books in a particular genre, fantasy genre, for example, science fiction and things, doesn't mean that they're all the same. But they all have to have certain. They all have a lot of them have certain elements to them.
Mhm.
I mentioned science fiction there just briefly because I know this one I've got coming out in this month is I don't know what you'd call it really. It is science fiction, but it's also got paranormal elements to it. So it's hard to define it really. But because a lot of the time people think of science fiction as being in outer space, which I'm happy to watch on TV or in a movie, but I'm not that interested in writing about. And so yeah, but again, it's people expect certain things if you're writing in a certain genre.
Yeah, and if you continually write in one genre, you will discover tropes that you enjoy writing. For example, in the romance that I write, the novels or short stories or whatever, I find out that I'm using a certain trope a lot where there are three characters involved, where there's the main character, the woman, and then there are two guys that you're not sure to the end of the story which one she's going to choose, and that's a common trope. And I know that Rosamund Pilcher used to use that same trope in a lot of her work, and I loved reading her stories because you kind of knew which guy the girl was going to go with at the end, but you weren't quite sure because both of them had good points and she liked both of them, and that's the same with the Twilight story for teenagers, where we had the vampire and then the werewolf, and we didn't know which Bella was really going to choose because she liked the werewolf guy. I can't remember what his name was now, but we thought she was going to choose the vampire, and she did, but it was still following that same kind of trope. So those are all kind of fun things to do. Okay, so we've given you 5 tips today to use to outline your novel. Hopefully you've decided that, yeah, outlining is not such a horrible thing. I think I can do that. And that you'll see it doesn't ruin your creativity. It actually protects it. And so what we'll talk about in our next episode, we've got 5 more tips to go over with you. But until
Yep.
then, just get started on your outline. Next week, when you come back and listen to our other 5 tips, maybe that will help you add to the outline. And I'm also going to give you some different outlining references and things, like the snowflake method of outlining your book. There are different methods you can try if you want to get into that too. So that's all we've got for this episode. So, Simon, tell us where people can learn more about you and your books.
Well, they can certainly find out more about me and my books, including the one that's going to be coming out this later this month, I think. Well, if I can get myself organized, they can find me at simon-rose.com. Now, where can they find you?
They can learn more about me at rightbythesea.com. You see Right by the Sea behind me, so it's just rightbythesea.com. Also, get my morning nudge. It's a little email that I send out 5 days a week, every weekday morning for free, giving you writing tips and other resources. Just go to morningnudge.com to find out about that. Or if you want some help every Monday morning, join my Monday morning manifestors at mondaymorningmanifestors.com, where we meet online via Zoom every Monday morning for an hour and support each other and hold each other accountable for our weekly goals. So that's it for now. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next week. Bye bye.
Yeah, happy writing.